Okay, one more that I would like to share with you about my dad. As I mentioned, my dad grew up in the Philippines for 45 years. In that time, he has befriended a family of Filipinos who started out to be really poor. Their dad was a machinist, excellent mechanic, and my dad was also somewhat of a thinker genius. To make the story short, my dad, as I said, befriended that family, and their eldest son became my dad's best friend. And my dad just really, really loved him. He treated him like his brother. Unlike his real brother, they didn't get along. But anyway, back in 1979, we left the Philippines and migrated here in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. And by the time the year 1983, the fall of 83, my dad was homesick again to the Philippines. And he had the itch to go home. So he bought himself a container, started packing it with a lot of toys, a lot of junk. There were two special items in that container. One was an ultralight aircraft. It's a weird looking contraption. It was called a Tomcat. It was only one of the few aircraft, ultralight build, that the wing was in the back and the canard was in the front. Of course, the canard is always up in the front, but if you looked at it, it kind of flew. It looked like the illusion of flying backwards, because the short wing or the small wing was up in the front, the long big wing was up in the back. And the engine of that was a Cuyuna. I think it was also a snowmobile engine, not sure. So with that, my dad packed that into the container, and along with other kitchen and household stuff that was packed into that container, shipping container. And one more item that I would like to mention is a 12, I think it was a 12-foot satellite dish. Now remember, back in 1983 and 84, there were no dish network or DirecTV, and I'm not sure. I think the satellite back then were still free. I think you didn't have to pay, and you got news and sports and all that good stuff. I don't know if HBO was already up and running at that time. I don't think so. But anyway, having said that, we packed up all that stuff, went home. Now my dad's best friend became one of the prominent family in that city. They had lots and lots of connections, most especially to the customs. So when the container arrived at the shipyard, my dad had a deal to bring it directly to our house and open it there. not in a public setting where a lot of people could steal something out of the container. Now here's the funny story and the point to this story. As the items were coming out of the container, the custom personnel was out right there by the door with a clipboard asking me what the items were, how much the value of it, and so this and that. When it came to the ultralight, I told them it was because the ultralight, you could take the wings off and you'd never know it was an ultralight. Well, they didn't know back then. So they told me what it was. I said, well, it's a school project. It's a air-powered go-kart. This was a trike, by the way. I said, yeah, you use it on the beach. You just go around and, it's air-powered. When it comes to the wing, because the wing was made out of cloth, Dacron, I said, it's a sail of a sailboat. How much was it worth? I said, I don't know, a couple $100. I think back then it cost like $5,000. So that was it. When it came to the satellite dish, now as you know, when you take a satellite dish apart, it becomes like a form of a pizza pie with a little curvature on it, and then you lay that on top of each other. Custom man says, what's this? I said, well, you put it together, it becomes like an umbrella. You put a stick in the middle, it's a garden umbrella. If you think about it, a fiberglass satellite dish, inverted, looks exactly like a swimming pool umbrella, right? How much was it worth? I don't know, $100. When it came to the receiver of the satellite, I said, what's this? It's a stereo. See, I was the one doing all this smuggling. I was smuggling all these items right in front of their faces because they did not know what it was. So anyway, all said and done, everything came out cheap. Now my dad, as I said, he loved his best friend really, really, really well. And from what I understand, my dad gave that satellite dish to his best friend. And so that was the time when, by the way, my dad's friend's name is LP. Now LP was this guy is a genius when it comes to electronics. And when it comes to business, everything he touches becomes gold. I mean, I have never known this guy to fail in any business venture he has ever went to. He was the first guy to introduce a hamburger shop called Sesame Street. The first guy to introduce a burgers restaurant in the city of Cagayan de Oro. Even though in education he was a mechanical engineer, but he was a self-taught electronics genius. To make the story short, LP assembled all the satellite dish, got it up and running, guess what? It was snowing. It turns out the satellite dish was too small. So did LP quit? No. He did not quit. He made his own satellite. From 12-inch, he got it up to, what was it? I think he became an 12 foot, I'm sorry. From 12-foot satellite dish, the original, he built a bigger one, which is, I think, either 15 or 18. And guess what? It was 80% better. Experimented until he built himself a 25-foot diameter satellite dish, and it was perfect. It was also the time when Mike Tyson, the beginning and the height of Mike Tyson's boxing career. And people were ordering these satellite dishes from LP. He could not make these things fast enough. The whole country was hungry for the satellite dish. And I remember one particular shopping mall that had a big TV, jumbo TV back then. When I say jumbo, it's nowhere near what the jumbo is today. But anyway, they put this on the cafeteria or the food court. And they would show Mike Tyson's fight and basketball and charge people per head, so much money. And this went on for a while, and it was the hottest thing in town. Next thing you know, LP had to expand his shop bigger and bigger just to keep up with the demands. Now, here's a story that I'm trying to convey. Remember back in '84, that's when President Marcos and Benigno Aquino had that's when Benigno Aquino and Ninoy Aquino was assassinated. And right after that, the Philippine people revolted against Marcos and formed the first people power movement in the world. And yes, Marcos was a dictator, and all the news was controlled and manipulated. Does that sound familiar today? No comment. But anyway, the news back then during the revolution, the peaceful march against Marcos, were all unreliable. They could not be trusted because they reported whatever Marcos told them. Sounds familiar? And so anyway, the only satellite dish up and running at that time, I think. Now this was before, I think I kind of jumped ahead. I think LP made the satellite dish before he started the business and start selling it. Then the march against Marcos happened. Yep, that's the way it happened. It wasn't sold in the market yet when the revolution came. From what I understand, that single little satellite dish, or later, became the only source of news in the Philippines. Every news media were either controlled, shut down, or it was owned by Marcos. And it was the only satellite or communication that was able to reach CNN and could tell tell the rest of the country of what really was happening. So yeah, little part of history, I guess. Just because of a man who loved his best friend. I bet my dad never realized the effect of that satellite. Now, all my dad did was buy the satellite, gave it to his friend. Most of the credit goes to his best friend, LP. He was the genius behind it. So, after Marcos got ousted out of the Philippines and migrated to Hawaii, that's where he died, then that's when the business started taking off, and that's when LP started selling all these satellite dishes around the Philippines. And LP became one of the most successful businessmen in the Philippines. And we'll jump later from 1984 to the year 2000. My dad was living here in Wisconsin, and my dad died. Before he died, he has always expressed himself to be buried in the Philippines. So we brought him home, and he is laid to rest in Camiguin Island. One important part of the story that I would like to say is, when my dad died, my LP never forgot what my dad, both of them did, and it was LP who spent all the money and arrangements and final expenses for my father. It was the best friend story I've ever heard.